Hey friends, Michael here, and today with me is Darla Baltazar. And right now we're currently in BGC Manila. And while we're here, we decided to record a quick podcast on Unafraid to Fail to have Darla share about some of her experiences about her trying to do something or pursue something by faith and succeeding. So, Darla, thank you for taking this time to do this quick podcast in the middle of a very busy place here in BGC. But thank you again so much for doing this. So, right now, actually, I just want to quickly ask you, in this podcast, it's all about unafraid to fail. So, it's part of the goal here is to encourage people that if they want to pursue something or try something out, to not be afraid to fail and trust that God will guide them and lead them through the process. Whether they end up failing or succeeding, there's always going to be room for growth there and lessons to be learned and new opportunities that can come their way. So, is there something like a short, brief story or experience that you've had about pursuing something and not totally being sure about where you're headed?
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty much like the whole thing with the Christian music career thing that I have going on. So, for those who don't know, I am doing it full time now. But even when I say that, that doesn't necessarily mean like it's the most profitable career to choose, especially to do music independently. But it does take a lot of courage to believe that if all of this aligns with God's will and God's provision as well for it to be possible, then it's worth trying. Um, yeah, I mean that's the whole premise really of me doing Christian music as a job and as a ministry combined. But yeah, even more specifically now doing Soul Talk, the album that I'm working on, it's really by faith because I'm not doing like a fundraising thing, but people are contributing and like I'm taking my time with it as well. Like I'm not limiting myself with a certain timeline. So, you know, I'm really just faithfully moving, and as needs arise, provision arises as well. And I always ask people to pray for me, and I pray as well for everything that I need, and God just shows up and provides. So um yeah, it's all very scary. Like if I'm honest, like you know there will be times when I like, periodically, maybe even every week, I have to sit down and ask, okay, God, is this still what you want me to do right now? I'm still, um, unsure if this is really what you call me to do. But then He reminds me that He's given me the skills. He's given me like everything that I need, and this is actually helping people. And I've had like people really telling me that my songs and my music has helped them through things. So I know that this isn't in vain. So yeah, basically, I sometimes am afraid to fail, but God's promises and the encouragement of the church has been so helpful for me. So yeah, I think that's my thing. Really, just don't be afraid to trust in God. Like, I mean, you can't really take steps of faith without knowing what you're putting your faith in. So make sure that you stay rooted in God's word and His promises. You can't go wrong with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And also, I guess what you mentioned earlier, like you can't, like, there will always be moments of fear, I guess, especially when pursuing something like what you're doing right now. This the full uncertainty of whether or not this is like part of God's plan,
Yeah.
and also like the instability of, man, when is the next revision gonna come in? There will always be those moments of fear. But I something that I've learned as well, like this week, because like recently I went to a convention, and like we were like marketing there because it's like part of my job. One of the things that I've learned there is, it was like God was telling me, because I'm kind of an introvert, as you know, and I don't like talking to people directly. But then God said that it's okay to be afraid, but it's like courage is not the absence of fear, but it's the face to step forward despite the fear. So the feeling of fear will be present even when you take the step of courage. But actually taking that step of courage is a sign of faith. And it's a sign that you're trusting God in the process, even though you may not be sure exactly what's going to happen. But just take that step of faith, knowing that the Lord is the one leading you and guiding you. And I like what you said as well about taking the time to actually pray and ask God. And especially in moments when you're forgetting and you're not really sure. I feel like for me, for example, there are days when I do forget to pray and ask God about those moments, especially in moments when I have like high doubts about myself. It's a major struggle to remind myself of, wow, Lord, this is actually something you want me to do. That was a really good reminder. Is there something like maybe just as a last thing? What's been your experience so far, like in making this album? That like the biggest part, the biggest struggle, I guess, in terms of the faith aspect, in the process of making this album right now.
Oh, actually, I do have a lot of doubt about how long it's taking. Sometimes I feel ashamed of like how, I look around and I see other people, other artists even, releasing like two albums already within the span of time that I'm making this one. And I do have a struggle in comparing myself with other creatives. But God reminded me, in the same way that Jesus told Peter to not compare himself to John and like what John's fate is going to be, like just follow me. I know that God also is telling me to just also like respect his his will for my life and honor that and just trust in that. So um actually what I've done is I've already kind of stepped back from those distractions. At the moment I decided to just focus on this project because I know that this is what God wants, and of course I need to finish it. But that also means if the temptation to compare myself and be ungrateful or worry is greater when I compare myself with other people, I just decided, okay, then I'll be disciplined to not look or like keep those distractions in control for now. So for this season, I'm stepping back in that scenario and just kind of focusing more on the album. Um, but yeah, that's that's how God has been carrying me to lately. And I also forgot what the question was.
No, that was that. No, that was actually that was solid. That was
Okay.
solid. So yeah, actually, that's a very relatable struggle because I struggle with that too. Because when I started out making music like a few years ago, one of the biggest struggle was I could make a full song that's like fully produced, but it takes me like a year or a half a year to produce just one song.
Right. Yeah.
And I guess in your case, you're comparing yourself in terms of making an album. I was comparing myself to you and to other artists who are like releasing singles every month or so. I was like, how do these guys do it? So it's like, bruh. And I keep trying to improve myself, but it never really works out. And even until today, I'm releasing like one or two, at the maximum, like three singles every single year. So I understand. So thank you for sharing and being vulnerable.
It's a real struggle.
It is very much so. So yeah, but it's good. That's what you just said. It's solid advice to stop looking and comparing yourself
If
to
it's
others.
distracting you, just
Yeah.
if it's distracting you, just eliminate it and be disciplined so that you won't sin basically.
Yeah, exactly. So that's that. I mean, I guess what do you do? Like you turn off social media, for example?
Like I stopped making content now actually because sometimes it's a distraction for me to focus on the creative aspect of making the album. So I stopped making content for now, just focusing on the album. And I also don't scroll on social media and yeah, for now actually. So that's been helping me, and it's been freeing. It's not that you know it's not that I guess there is humility in admitting how weak I am and comparing myself to others. It's not that I don't like other artists or anything,
Right.
but it's just not helping me at the moment. So yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think everybody who goes through the creative process as well. I mean, for me, for example, I started this page called pace.Lento. to help sort of promote the message of rest, right? Resting in Jesus. But then it came to a point as well when I started comparing myself to other creators who were creating more sort of aesthetically more pleasing looking content compared to what I was making. And it was really bothering me like, why does this bother me so much that I couldn't create something like them, you know? So I had to sort of reel myself back in, go back to the whole reason and purpose of why I was making this sort of content, to sort of remove the distraction again, you know. So I think that's really solid advice, and thank you as well for being vulnerable with us. So I guess in closing, because this podcast is kind of getting a bit too longish, and my brother is like standing there for like the past 20, maybe 15 minutes. You know, what's your advice for people who want to do something, start something, but are afraid to do something because they are unsure about the future and are not even sure how to do it? Like, what's your main advice for them right now?
Get a God rooted vision and let that be your only guide, really. Because everything else is going to be a distraction. Even what other people are doing or what other people are saying, even what other gurus are saying. But if you make it clear what the vision is from God that you're supposed to do and just focus on that, it'll be so much easier, my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. And also to add to that, there's something that my dad always says: don't let your circumstance influence your vision. Let your vision influence your circumstance. And again, that's very solid advice. Thank you so much again, Darla, for doing this. And I hope to everyone it has been helpful and insightful for you listening to this podcast. Thank you again so much, and God bless. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.